Church family, what's going on? My name is Chris Norris. I'm the online site pastor here at McLean Church Online, and we are so excited to be spending time together as we prepare our hearts for Easter. Easter is just a few weeks away, can you believe it? And man, I would be remiss if I did not remind you to make plans to join us for any of our Good Friday or Easter services at any of our physical locations in person or right here at McLean Church Online. We have a powerful service planned so that we can make sure we truly observe the significance and the impact that this day means for us as followers of Jesus. So make sure you bring your friends, bring your family. We're so excited to celebrate Easter together. Hey, how was your week? Seriously, tell me how your week was. Was it good? Was it bad? If you're watching any of our interactive services, make sure you tell us in the comments, did you have a good week? You know, I actually truthfully did not have a great week, okay? Had some ups and downs and some moments that I'm not gonna spend time sharing or explaining, but I will say this, and I hope it encourages you today. I had a week that wasn't fantastic, but then the weekend arrived. And yeah, weekends are great because you don't have to go to work and you can sleep in, but something different happened for me. God reminded me in just the course of about 24 hours that everything that happened in the previous week that wasn't so great didn't matter, because all of that stuff that was stressing me out was not really a part of His plan. It wasn't. I thought it was, and I couldn't figure out why this was happening. And then the weekend came and some pretty special things happened in my life that were clearly evidence that God was saying, this is the stuff that matters. If it's okay, I'll share one of those great moments with you. My good friend was baptized, right? Baptized, a public declaration in front of his friends and family, including myself, giving his life to Jesus. And you know, it was a whirlwind moment. Like, he sent us a letter and we said, you know what, we have to go and be there with him. We have to celebrate this day together. So we hopped in the car and drove about 2.5 hours to see my friend give his life to Christ. In that moment, as I watched my friend do this, I realized, you know, last week wasn't great, but man, the hours upon hours I spent kind of dwelling on what wasn't a great week, this moment, the 10 seconds it took for him to be submersed in the water and brought up out, was like, that is what matters. And God reminded me in that moment, stay the course, good and faithful servant, stay the course. Don't let life stress you out, because I will bring these moments in front of you and remind you of what really matters and what we do in our life and the impact it has on others. So with all that being said, if you had a bad week, you likely will if you didn't. We all have bad weeks. Try to see God in the midst of it, because God slapped me right across the face and said, focus on what matters, Chris. And I'm grateful for that. And it doesn't always happen that way, but it did for me. And it was a really cool moment. I hope it encourages you. I hope it reminds you that God is in control. God is active in your life. And just when you think things are out of control, look for Him. Find Him in those moments where you realize what matters, and He'll remind you that it's gonna be okay. And speaking of God being in the midst of our lives and being involved in our lives, Pastor Brian Kelly will be joining us again today for another great message. Let's prepare our hearts for a time of worship together.
It's not over till it's over. I got resurrection power. When the odds are stacked against me, I'm still living in the victory. Not living in the chains of my yesterdays. You break me out of my cage. Come on. I am coming out fighting. And I am like Mercury rising. I got supernatural power inside me. So don't you count me out. I'm coming out fighting. Yeah, I'm coming out fighting. There's some spirit in these dry bones. There's some Holy Ghost in my soul. Every scar has taught me something. Gotta get up when I'm losing. I stuck here coming out fighting. I'm coming out fighting, yeah. I've been broken, yeah, I've been beaten, but there's some fighting left. And I will rise again, find my feet again, and you're not done with me yet. Yeah. And I am coming out fighting. I am like Mercury rising. I am coming out fighting. I am like Mercury rising. I got supernatural power inside of me, so don't you count me out. I'm coming out fighting. I'm coming out fighting.
Who else commands all the hosts of heaven? Who else can make every king bow down? Who else can whisper in darkness trembles? Only a holy God. What other beauty demands such praises? What other splendor outshines the sun? What other majesty rules with justice? Only a holy God. Come and behold him, the one and the only. Cry out, sing holy, forever a holy God. Come and worship the holy God. What other glory consumes like fire? What other power can raise the dead? What other name remains undefeated? Only a holy God. Come and behold him, the one and the only. Cry out, sing holy, forever a holy God. Come and worship the holy God. Come and behold him, the one and the only. Cry out, sing holy, forever a holy God. Come and worship the holy God.
Hey, thanks worship team. And in this moment, I would like to invite you to give back during our moment of giving here at McLean Church Online. As always, we don't want to make this awkward and uncomfortable, right? This is a moment that really matters in our service where you can simply use your mobile device to go to mcleanchurch.org/give. Perhaps you can use our mobile app to do that. Or if you're old school, no shame, we appreciate the opportunity to accept checks if you want to send those in the mail. Regardless of how you do it, we are so grateful that you choose to do it and support the ministry here at McLean Church.
Well, hey everyone, thank you for joining us for this presentation. We are recording this video the last week of March in Edinburgh, Pennsylvania, and we are in the middle of a series on the narrative books of the Old Testament, the Deuteronomistic history, as we've referred to it as, the books of Joshua through 1st and 2nd Samuel. And we're looking at some of these ancient and familiar stories from the Old Testament, asking the question, how do they inform us? How do they help us today? Because these stories date back thousands of years, probably the origins of the stories going back almost 3,000 years, if not earlier. And yet these stories, these narratives have endured the test of time because as people in every generation and every age have read these stories, they found a unique resonance with them. They found that what was going on in the ancient world wasn't all that unlike what's going on in the present, and people have seemingly always been able to see themselves as part of these stories. And I'm coming to believe that this was a lot of the intention behind the original authors, that these stories would be presented as a way of inviting the present day reader into them, as a way of helping the reader of any age see themselves engaged in the narrative and the activities that were happening. And that's the approach that we're taking as we look at these texts. I have to admit that my approach to these ancient narratives has changed quite considerably over the years. Have gone from seeing these as meant to be very rigidly understood and defined to a much broader understanding and appreciation of their intent and their application. And I think as we look at the ways Jesus and the New Testament writers and the ancient Jewish community understood these texts, we're very much encouraged, challenged, given permission to apply them perhaps more broadly than we typically think of doing so. And today, as we look at what I think is probably the most familiar story out of the book of Joshua, the conquest of the city of Jericho, we're going to be invited into understanding this ancient story with a very present day application. Now, as we have said very clearly from the beginning of this series, some of these stories, and particularly the one we're going to read today, raise some very serious ethical questions that the reader must engage with. We're going to read today a story of the unprovoked attack against an ancient city, and not only the driving out of its inhabitants, but actually the annihilation of its inhabitants by the people of Israel, by the people of God, seemingly functioning at the command of God. And this should create quite a bit of disequilibrium in the mind of the present day reader, because on the surface it is very troubling. And we are going to address this issue in 3 weeks, the weekend after Easter. We're going to be talking about how we, as present day followers of Jesus, Jesus who taught us to love our enemies, to bless those who curse us, to forgive those who do us wrong, how we as followers of Jesus can accept these ancient texts and stories as somehow being given to us from God. And so I really encourage you that week after Easter to make sure you listen in as we try to make some sense of how we reconcile all this in our minds. The other thing I want to quickly mention before we come to the story that we're going to read today is a special welcome to all the members of our Edinburgh congregation who are joining us online this week. Each year in Edinburgh, we're given the unique opportunity to give up our facility for a week so that our local high school can host their annual Broadway dinner in our building. And we love this opportunity every year because we love the opportunity it gives us to be inconvenienced and to put other people first. So for all of the members of our Edinburgh congregation who are giving up your in-person worship services this weekend, thank you. Thank you for having the priority in your heart, in your life, to serve others. This is indeed the Jesus way, and appreciate your willingness to do that. So with this introduction, I want to read to you just a portion of this very familiar story about the crumbling of the walls of the city of Jericho. And I'm going to read from Joshua, the 6th chapter, and we'll read just the first 7 verses. There the text says, "Now Jericho was shut up inside and out because of the Israelites. No one came out and no one went in. The Lord said to Joshua, 'See, I have handed Jericho over to you, along with its kings and soldiers. You shall march around the city, all the warriors circling the city once. Thus you shall do for 6 days, with 7 priests bearing 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. On the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, the priests blowing the trumpets. When they make a long blast with the ram's horn, as soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city will fall down flat, and all the people shall charge straight ahead.' So Joshua, son of Nun, summoned the priests and said to them, 'Take up the ark of the covenant, and have 7 priests carry 7 trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark of the Lord.' To the people he said, 'Go forward and march around the city. Have the armed men pass on before the ark of the Lord.'" And of course, if you grew up in the church, you probably remember the ending of this story from Sunday school class, that the Israelites follow God's command. They march around the city for 6 days. On the 7th day, as they march around and the trumpets sound, the people give a great shout. The walls of the city of Jericho collapse, and the people of Israel conquer the city. Last week, we talked about the fact that sometimes we need to move in order to see how God is working or directing our lives. Focusing on the presence of God, sometimes the thing we need to do most is just take the next step. Today, we want to talk about the importance of working a system. And again, at the risk of perhaps over-spiritualizing the text, I think this narrative invites us into a conversation about how God often works in our lives to help us move forward. In this narrative, it's fascinating because God is going to do a great miracle. The walls of the city of Jericho are going to fall, but the miracle is going to come after the Israelites work and follow a particular system or plan. God gives the Israelites great detail and instruction about how they're to proceed. For 6 days, they're to march around the city, led by the priests. On 6 days, the trumpets are to sound. On the 7th day, the trumpet is to sound and the people are to give a shout. And only after working the system and the program does the miracle of God appear. And I wonder if one of the reasons this story has persevered so long is that it resonates with a truth that we understand about life and humanity. And that is often what we need to do to resolve a problem or a challenge or an obstacle in our life is that we need to work a system. We need to work a program. Now, of course, just like we said last week, it's always our desired preference to see God intervene, to see God do something spectacular without us having to do anything. That would be our preferred mode of functioning. And yet stories like this from the ancient world, they remind us that God often works, or the work of God becomes visible to us in response to the actions or the steps that we are taking. And in this story, the people of Israel, they're asked to work a program. They're asked to follow a system. And only after this period of time, 7 days, which again is as significant of a number as 3 days was in our text last week, 7 days sort of a symbol or an analogy for completion or for the full amount or the complete amount of time. After working the system for the right amount of time, the walls fall down. Now, some commentators on this passage have actually suggested that the marching around the city 7 times created vibrations in the ground that weakened the walls, and the sonic blast of the trumpets weakened the masonry, so when the people gave the final shout, that sound wave collapsed the walls. I'm not sure about all that, but what I am sure about is that God's miracle is seen after the people of God worked a program. And we know this about life. We know that incrementalism can serve us well or serve us poorly. Little negative things done over time often result in grave and unfortunate consequences. But the converse is also true. Small positive things done consistently over time result in good consequences. Little things done in the right direction consistently over time produce grand results. The people of Israel march for 7 days and the walls fall down. What problem might be overcome? What obstacle might be defeated? What challenge might be conquered if we followed a consistent pattern for a period of time in our lives? Struggling with being a nicer person? What would happen if each day you made a simple pact with yourself that you were going to try to smile at someone at work or at school and wish them a good day? Little things done over time produce great results. Working to focus more on your spirituality? What would happen if you tried to awaken 10 minutes earlier in the day and spend 5 minutes of that time quietly asking God to help you and your family and your friends through the day ahead? Little things done over time can produce big results. Trying to improve your physical well-being. Maybe it's not about joining a gym and committing to an hour of exercise every day. Maybe the simple step is to say, when I go to work, I'm going to park as far away as I can, and I'm going to walk to the building. Little things done over time produce big results. Trying to get a better handle on your finances. Maybe you start to save $3 a week, and you do that consistently over time. Little steps following the system produce big results, but here's the interesting twist to all of that this story brings to mind. Little good things done over time produce positive results in and of themselves. But in addition to that, God often seems to respond with the miraculous when His people begin to take little steps. It's fascinating, and we see it throughout the biblical narrative. The Israelites are asked to take a walk for 7 days. The priests are asked to play some music on the trumpet for 7 days. And in response to their consistent obedience to the command of God, the consistent working of the plan that He put in front of them, God stepped in and did even more than their simple actions of working the system could produce. Could this really be the way God works? If we follow the right plan, the plan to incrementally do good and bring good in and through our lives, could the following of that system or plan really become an invitation for God to step into our lives and do the miraculous? And could God, for whatever reason, most often respond to our initial steps, either stepping forward or following a plan, as a way of revealing His powerful work in our lives? What might following a system, what might following a plan unlock in your life from the miraculous power and perspective of God? So, a very old story that can be looked at many different levels from many different angles. I think, again, following ancient Jewish tradition, following the practice of Jesus and the early leaders of the Christian church, stories like this invite us into exploring their application for us in the present day. And I think one of the invitations for us out of this ancient story is to think about how consistently following a plan, a good plan, might serve for our benefit. So, again, at the risk of over-spiritualizing the text, let me ask, what's the Jericho in your life that you're facing at this moment? What's the challenge you're trying to conquer? What's the problem you're trying to figure out? What would the first step toward a solution look like? And what would a consistent pattern or practice that you can engage in regularly be so that the power of God might be unlocked through your simple steps and practices. Here's the bottom line. These ancient stories give powerful attestation to the fact that we are not living this life alone. There indeed is a God, there is a divine presence, there is a universal force that is with us and that is working for our good. What are the steps we can take? What are the practices we can engage in to be more aware of and appropriating of that good and powerful presence in our lives?
There's no silver or gold and no treasure untold that could draw me away from your heart. Neither love of myself or of anyone else will do. Jesus, nothing compares to this grace that rescues me. Savior, now and forever your face is all I see.
No, I am at your feet, humbled by the wonder of your majesty. One thing I know, I find all I need in your unending love, in your unending love.
Letting go of my pride, I lay down my insides just to worship in spirit and truth. More than all of my dreams, more than fame, I will seek you, Lord. Jesus, nothing compares to this grace that rescues me. Savior, now and forever your face is all I see. Now all I am, I lay at your feet. I'm humbled by the wonder of your majesty. One thing I know, I find all I need in your unending love, in your unending love. Now all I am, I lay at your feet, and I'm humbled by the wonder of your majesty. And one thing I know, I find all I need in your unending love, in your unending love. this grace that rescues me. Savior, now and forever your face is all I see. Jesus, nothing compares to this grace that has rescued me, Lord. Oh, Savior, now and forever your face is all I see. Now all I am, I lay at your feet, and I'm humbled by the wonder of your majesty. The one thing I know, I find all I need in your unending love, in your unending love. Now all I am, I lay at your feet, and I'm humbled by the wonder of your majesty. One thing I know, I find all I need in your unending love, in your unending love. And now all I am, I lay at your feet, and I'm humbled by the wonder of your majesty. One thing I know, I find all I need in your unending love, in your unending love.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with us here at McLean Church Online. It is the highlight of my week to spend some time with you here. And don't forget to stay connected with us, right? We've got so many things happening that I don't have time to tell you about all of them. But one of the ones I will remind you of is our baptism weekend that is coming up in April. If you check out mcleanchurch.org, we would love to give you more information about that. You can sign up to be baptized. I shared a story earlier in the service today about my friend who was baptized recently. This is a momentous occasion that if you're ready, our church is willing to walk you through that process. So please check out mcleanchurch.org for more information about baptisms coming up this month. And in the meantime, make sure you follow us on all social media. And of course, visit mcleanchurch.org to stay up to date with everything that's happening here. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you again next week.